And welcome to Lunar Magic for solitary and group occult practice. Since we are a group in the Great Hall at SOA, I think that it's really good to talk about some of the group ritual that we can use lunar magic for, but also for solitary practice and how this can really be seen as a as above, so below, inside and out kind of practice with looking at the moon, because we talk about our sun signs, we talk about sometimes our full on chart. I think the moon has some really potent magic that comes with it, and especially in a place called the School of Occult Arts, which is defined as hidden knowledge. And the moon really plays into that part. I'm just keeping an eye here on the chat as well. All right. And before we get started too, in the chat, if you have any intentions that you have for the class this evening, something you're hoping to come away with, something that you have an intuitive nudge around, or you want to add into your solitary occult practices, is there are so many different ways that we'll be touching on the moon, and archetypally, cyclically. We'll also have this year's moon cycles as well, for those of you I know that are doing Bujo witchy things, and how you can keep track of all of these things for auspicious dates, for birthdays, for ritual workings. So I'm curious too if there are any really big moon things that you'd love to feel more solid about within your individual practices. And of course, if there are questions that come up during the lecture, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we will have unrecorded time at the end of class to have discussions around the moon, which I'm sure there will be. I wanted to start off the class with a lovely permission slip giving, really great description of moon magic and kind of that I use to encompass my own lunar workings. And this is actually from Taschen's The Book of Symbols, Reflections on Archetypal Images, for those of you that are curious. And I will drop this book also in the Great Hall too. And the Book of Symbols states, "Thank goodness for the moon's inconstancy. The loveliness, the fearsomeness, the portentousness of its measured concealments and revealments, the apportioned variability of its shadow and light, how reassuring the cadence of lunar time, its allowances for increase and necessary diminishment." I just feel that's such a permission giving ebb and flow, when usually we see in culture and the regular maxims of work and the world being output, output, output. And this is recognizing there is an inhale with the exhale, which we always forget. But if we don't do enough inhaling, we can't create the space for whatever it is that we want to manifest and bring out into the physical world, which we'll be talking a little bit about after as well. So throughout time, the moon, the sun, various different planets have had their own histories. They've had their own goddess and god kind of energies and archetypes that have been throughout time. The moon has always been a very important part of various different civilizations. And these are just a little handful of some of the deities that are assigned to the moon or lunar type of workings. And for those of you that do deity work, this may bring some intuitive nudges to maybe some workings that feel supportive for you, as we're still in, at this time, it's January and darker months in Northern Hemisphere. So I feel that this might be a really good and apt time for some of those lunar workings. Some of the meanings and archetypes that are associated with the moon really show up as representing the spiritual, the psychic, the creative workings, the magical, the sexual, the prophetic, and lunatic dispositions. This is where we get lunacy from, of this In tarot, this dark night of the soul that the fool goes into on their metaphysical journey, but there's still the light of the moon, this mirroring of light from the sun. It's not its own light, but it reflects from the shadow. We'll get a little bit into eclipses there that just magnify the shadow, but in this case, the moon is reflecting some of the unseen parts of the sun in that way. And the lunatic, the wise mystic, the wise mad person can see that. We also have the associations with conception, pregnancy and birth, agricultural cycles of sowing and reaping, moisture coming into being. And these are also taken from different gods and goddesses throughout time, which is really interesting with moisture, wetness. Even in the moon card, we see kind of the banks of the river and more of the water creatures on the banks of the river. These go really well with our kind of water signs, astrologically as well, with water elements in our ritual workings, but also with water in our alchemical workings, for those of you that are going down that path. One of the first archetypes and deities that is associated with the moon that most people are maybe familiar with is Thoth from the Egyptian civilization, associated with measures and proportion, thinking about cycles of the moon and how much light, how much not, also with learning and also with deep wisdom, and also associated with the moon. We also have Hathor from Sumerian civilization, who was the goddess of the moon, but also the milk of the moon. This goes back to the moisture, the water, the nourishment that's coming from a very deep-seated, wise space. In a way, Hathor was the milk nourishing the world from the wisdom space. We then have Nana Sin from the Mesopotamian civilization, also known as the celestial physician. And I'll show you a little graphic of Nana Sin sitting on their throne on one of those ancient tablets, and there's a crescent moon right above them, that they are given the celestial healing type wisdom to heal the physical and the soul body, which I think is a very beautiful mind-body connection that we're starting to see even in more contemporary medical model practices too. We then see Isis, again from the Egyptian civilization, wearing typically a black cloak, hidden, or very much not veiled, nourishing the hidden seeds of the earth. So this goes into the agricultural connection with what are the seeds metaphorically, but also literally. For those of you kind of more cottage witch types or gardening witch types, Isis may be an interesting deity to connect with, to explore, to research. She was also the wife of Osiris, which is really interesting, as Osiris was in charge of the underworld in Egyptian myth and lore. And so that really interesting marriage of moon and underworld, again, that we all know in the Rider-Waite-Smith, those of us that do tarot can see that connection pretty vividly. And then I do not even want to mess up the name of this deity, but I do have some reference materials from the Aztec civilization, but she was the goddess of the moon. And what is interesting, again, these relationships between the different deities, she actually killed her brother, the god of war, and stopping the war from starting. And this goes back to that wisdom that comes from the moon, from the deep-seated place, and stopping this war and this violence, coming in from more of that deep stillness type of energy. Violent, but still coming from a deeper wisdom space with this particular goddess from Aztec culture. And here we have some of those representations of the moon card. Here we have water represented in the back, water represented in the front, the howling of the moon. We have these columns reminiscent of the high priestess, again, who is also ruled by the moon. We have the Aztec deity represented here. We have Isis here. And here we have the Sumerian Nana Sin with the moon always represented in the hieroglyphics of the time from the Sumerian tablets and Sumerian architecture. So these are just a few of the different deity, goddess, mythical type of human forms, deity forms that we have access to connect with the moon. And for those of you that are very interested in more of that type of research or bringing that into your occult studies to deepen your connection with moon time, with lunar magic, this may be a really great entryway to seeing, do I have an intuitive nudge to connect with any of these particular deities? This is just scratching the surface of some of the different connections and things that they represented within their own civilizations. So with making sense of the moon, let's dive into some moon cycles. And I highly recommend, and of course we'll have access to this in like PDF slides because it is nice to have those references with moons. Within my own grimoire, Bujo, I also like to draw out my waning and waxing and new moon and full moon because there's just so many and just to have them available for reference for myself. So just a little quick tip there, because lunar things besides the apps, to have that really solid knowledge within ourselves, I think it helps to make it personal and put it in our grimoires and books of shadows. So starting with the new moon, this is going back to the hidden, the unseen. This is when we do not see the moon in the sky. We're just like, where is the moon? Where did it go? Here it's even peeking out a little bit on the right corner, but typically the moon in this part is pretty much unseen and dark from the sky. It doesn't mean that it is not there, which is the important part of connecting here with this moon, with the new moon type of energy. A lot of us may be familiar with new moon as new setting intention time. This is planting the seed underneath the soil. I also kind of want to connect with, for those of you that were in the Kabbalah class, the connection of the nous, the higher mind, the connection with the nothingness that creates all. This is that new moon energy that I almost tell folks, yes, you can connect with the intentions, but to even make it deeper, going back to the water associations, connect with the feeling of the desire made manifest. And we might not even know what that is, but we're connecting with a quality, something more metaphysical, something more ethereal. And of course, if writing intentions on the new moon is working for you, I don't want to break that practice, but just consider this is a little bit more of that liminal, hypnagogic, underworld type of state. This is also full permission for resting, for sleeping more. Your body may have lower energy. And this is more for the collective as well. I know there were some Venus stations on Friday, and I got a couple messages from folks saying, I feel really, really bad, or like random depression or old thoughts of things. Yep. And saying, yeah, that's the collective type of energy. We're going to talk about the solo moon things and how we can reframe that, but there's always going to be our connection with the collective at the same time. So I know a lot of folks have been feeling that, and myself as well. I was like, what is this? I thought we worked through this. This is also a fabulous time to engage with self-hypnosis, with trance work, with automatic writing, with things that kind of close off the conscious mind from over-intellectualizing and opening up ourselves to channeling divine workings, more subconscious type of workings. This is really, the new moon is the representation of the metaphysical underworld. We're in that space. Perfect for intention setting through emotional and subconscious connecting or naming. So this one is the no pressure intention setting. If we get one, great, but also it's totally normal and expected that you wouldn't. And it's more of a feeling state that can be arriving on the new moon. And let's go here. So we start to see, after we're coming a little bit outside of the metaphysical underworld, we're still in it. Most of it is dark, but we're seeing the sliver of the moon crescent here. And this is the first step towards fullness. I'm using fullness as the manifestation of the full moon. This is also the first signs of illumination. So if we were to think of hypnosis, liminal space, underworld for the new moon, this is our consciousness slowly starting to seep into what is it that our intention, our desire really is. It's coming maybe a little bit more into a form, not physical yet, but oh, wait, actually, my desire is this, and it's this quality of this memory that maybe right? It's still not tangible, but we're feeling it. This is also a great time for clarity spells because the beginnings of these illuminations are like the perfect time for getting these clarity. This could be clarity around jobs or communication or things like miscommunications that have occurred. This could be those Mercury retrograde type of things with, do I get my new computer or do I get the new cell phone type of thing? Clarity around the decision making and those things to make it a little bit more practical for you all. This is also a fabulous time for that divine guidance. We're still in that liminal subconscious space. So that's that, again, we're still very open to divine workings with the waxing crescent. We then have the first quarter, and this is a little bit like halfway full, maybe a little bit less. So we are completely aware now of the underworld, and now we're moving into a little bit of the awareness of the physical, or we're starting to see some of the manifestations from the intentions of our desires or the feeling like, oh, this is what that feeling was, or some synchronicity starting to occur. So we have this tension between leaving the subconscious to going to the conscious and then taking inspired action. This is where we might feel like, oh, wait, I got to make that phone call, or here's the synchronicity, like I mentioned. This is also the first quarter where we're releasing the past and constant urge to run away. This is running away from, I got to do action, or I got to go back to this old coping. And this is sitting with, this is being with and listening to, this is an inspired action versus I should be doing this, or I'm going to punish myself and engage in this type of other behavior. And so this is that urge to run away, urge to go back to old coping, or going back to old self, because the lunar cycle is constantly this refining of self. This is also where we can start seeking authentic individuality in self-expression, desires, and manifestation. So we're in the underworld, in the liminal, connecting with little slivers and crumbs of what our desires are. And the first quarter is saying, wait, here is my sovereign autonomous self in this weird liminal hypnagogic underworld state. And now we can connect in with the desires. We can start connecting with them within our body somatically. First quarter is definitely going to be more body stuff. We might feel a little bit more energized rather than in the first new moon where we're feeling more tired, we're needing more rest. And this is where also some more physical manifestations of our desires may come through. It's not the full moon, like here's the whole show and here's everything being made real, but actually here's some, again, more of these little nuggets of things. The first blossoms, if we're going back to the agricultural sowing and reaping. This is also, as we're being aware of our urge to run away or urge to go back to old coping, it's the perfect time for releasing, naming, and releasing those internal thoughts, behaviors before taking action, before taking the aligned action, making sure that it's not a should. And this is, again, just another reminder, we're still in the metaphysical underworld, but we have a stairway up now. We see that there are ways to move outside of the underworld here. And I want to just check on the chat here. But early in my practice with all phases of the moon, I've always been obsessed with the moon and always want to know all things moon. Yes, new moon makes so much for me. Oh, it's in the 12th house. I mean, and it's an Aries. Yes. One of the first ways I really noticed my deep connection with the moon was always finding myself feeling much lower energy around new moon. Yeah, and invite you all, whether you're live in class tonight or watching the replay, to track that for this next lunar cycle. Notice your energy levels. You all have your Bujo templates now. That might be a fun one to put in and see on a scale of 1 to 5, like 5, I'm super energized, 1, I'm just depleted and need to sleep all the time. What feels, just doing a little check-in with yourself and then seeing where in the moon cycle we are. Oh, and it's conjunct my there's so much. Oh, well, I'm very excited for the astrology class. That's going to be a fun one. Yes, so we're still in metaphysical underworld here. These are great shares and noticing. And feel free in the Great Hall, even after the lunar class, noticing, collecting. What lunar cycle are we on? This is how I'm feeling. Oh, wait, it's new moon. Everyone checking in. How we doing? Right? Is for the collective. So now we're like, ooh, full moon. Hold up, not yet. Real soon, though. We have waxing gibbous. And this is where we've already garnered lots of information, because keep in mind, these parts of the moon cycle are lasting a couple days, maybe 3 to 4 on average. Some of these different days. So we'll have 4 days of waxing gibbous, 3 days of new moon, and then first quarter. All these moon cycles, they're all going to be a couple different days. So we'll have lots of time to gather information both on the inside and the out. So refining your commitment to your desire. Is this really what I want? And I mentioned that on the new moon, right? Because we're setting intentions on the new moon, but really we're settling into the body. We're settling into rest and making space for the desire to be known. And the waxing gibbous is the invitation to connect in with, is this really what I want? It's like, oh, wait, I want this quality. And now the desire is making itself more clear. And from that also, waxing gibbous is perfect time for, here's the inspired action. Here's the synchronistic event. Here's the thing I'm allowing myself to receive. Doesn't mean that we're like sitting on our laurels. We may be, but also this is where there is spaciousness for right timing for things. So waxing gibbous also planning within capacity. This is where we can reassess and see, is this the direction that I want to go? Is this feeling okay for me? Did I overextend myself for my fire signs in the room? Am I feeling too much, or did I get muddled down for my water signs in the room? Or for my earth people, did we get bogged down by the details? And then for my air people, are we over intellectualizing and analysis paralysis? So these are the different things for the different elements, where the waxing gibbous is a little bit of a like, hey, gentle nudge. Is this really what we want? Let's come down to the desire. Let's come back somatically. And this is where really there's some anticipation, some excitement type of energy collectively that's coming up. This is getting ready for the manifestation. I like the thing was like getting ready for the party, like the surprise party. Ooh, are they coming? It's exciting. And really when we're doing spell work of any kind in using lunar magic, whether it's you're making your moon water or anything like that, consider the desire or the manifestation that will reveal itself during full moon time as this part of yourself that you're throwing a surprise party for. This moon water is for the surprise. This is right. It comes with so much love and so much care in that way. And that's a really great way to materialize or physicalize the kind of underworld, metaphysical, ethereal type of desire. Like, how do we make that physical? It's like, oh, it's a surprise party. We want to bring that love in. This is also waxing gibbous. I already mentioned it. The perfect time for inspired action, making the phone calls, putting out the resumes, taking care of yourself. It's also the balancer. If you maybe during the new moon were putting out a lot and you were pushing and intending, waxing gibbous maybe bringing in some kind of Libra balance in a way of calming things down, of bringing things softly into being. And then when you end up not efforting, then the manifestation and the synchronicities just become so easy. Like, why was I efforting so much? It was new moon time. It was rest, and I wasn't listening because we are human and this is what we do. And so this is where we have the waxing gibbous be the first part of the lunar cycle, where we go from metaphysical underworld heading to the physical world. These are really kind of coinciding together, and we start poking our head up a little bit, or we see the light as we move into the full moon surprise party. This is the manifestation. This is the illumination. This is the oh duh moment. This is the gratitude. This is the divine emotional release, or the divine download that comes through. This is also the kind of, if we're going to separate the lunar cycle, this is the beginning of the physical world. So all this internal stuff was brewing inside, and then the full moon brings into on course its physical reality of a reflection of the as below, so above in this case. And this is the perfect time during the full moon for physical manifestations and taking action, right? So this is why most people that I see will put up their jar of moon water during the full moon. They'll leave it out on the windowsill. For those of us that maybe have a hard time resting or allowing the inner workings to be present, it would be beneficial to maybe even do some moon water around the new moon time as well, right? So listening to or being more receptive to the resting or to the passive receiving instead of the always efforting all the time, because you never know when it's the right phone call or the weird email or something else, like, and everything just changes. You're like, oh, that's all it was. That's that new moon type of energy. So full moon, perfect for physical manifestations, taking action. This is also collectively where we may feel the most energized as a collective. Again, that surprise party energy. There's an excitement, there's a buzz, there's something a little different here. And if you're noticing that during the full moon, you're saying like, oh, I usually feel tired or I feel wonky during the full moon, we're going to get to that, because again, looking at your personal moon sign that you were born under, I'll explain a little bit of this later so I don't get ahead of myself. That's almost like your full moon. It's like, how meta do we want to get with, right? Like the collective cycle, but then also your full moon. You might be born on a new moon, and new moon, you're like, I'm super energized. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's kind of like a reverse. Yeah. So keep that in mind too. We're part of the collective, but we're also sovereign individuals, and thinking of that as well. So now we have the full moon, and slowly, the party's not over yet, still there, but now we're mingling, right? This is the teaching and sharing from the manifestation. These are the folks that were born under waning gibbous. They're like, we got the party and I'm just super excited to share the abundance with everybody. And that's what waning gibbous is. It's almost like it's like the 6 of coins in tarot. It's the I have abundance and I have here to give in the physical realm. But notice also that waning gibbous also is very aware that we are in the conscious physical realm and we're heading back into the subconscious metaphysical, into the underworld again. So we have the physical for a little bit, but we're already knowing we're heading back down. But the waning gibbous is still inviting folks to take part and receive from that abundance, from the intellectual, from the detail. I'm speaking to all my air, earth, water, fire people, that's the gift that waning gibbous gives. It's extending that. It's the gratitude feeling that shows up after the manifestation. And usually sometimes when waning gibbous appears in the cycle, personally or collectively, and the manifestation isn't what we thought it was going to be, because people are like, I do all this work and it's not manifesting. Waning gibbous is the wise part of the moon that says, but wait, this is the gift that you're not yet seeing within this manifestation. And it's usually like, oh, really? But then we receive it. with a little bit of sugar. But waning gibbous is perfect time for class planning, for taking magical action with trust. We are in a really heightened space of trust, of abundance, energetically, spiritually in this way. If you are thinking about new moon and those little breadcrumbs of desires and qualities, and like, I can't really feel that, it's not being clear to me. Waning gibbous is also the really good time where you're like, I want this and I want this and I don't know, and it's going to be fine. Like, this is what I just need right now. Because waning gibbous is a little bit more, I could see like waning gibbous is fiery a little bit. It's very much like, I'm just getting what I need and I'm going to trust that I'm going to get it. And it's just a little bit of that type of energy where we're just putting it out there, and whatever needs to be magnetized for our highest good will appear for us. So waning gibbous, for those of you doing spell work, ritual work, and are uncertain about what they want or need, but they want what's highest good for them and everyone involved, that's the perfect time to be engaging in some of this in this part of this lunar cycle with ritual work. All right. So we now have kind of we had our moment, the party, and then we're slowly kind of come back down. And so we have our last quarter moon here. And this is, we've gone through a cycle. We've learned some new things. We've refined and recommitted to some things right before the full moon. And then the full moon appeared. We have the waning gibbous that was reflecting and also giving. And the last quarter is, all right, we're on the drive home from the surprise party. And this is where we're releasing the old self, old beliefs, old ideas. This is where we have intuition or the deeper wisdom around what needs to be released around certain ideas and beliefs. This is the deep understanding of letting go. It's not like, okay, let me make my list of what worked and what didn't. This is coming from the deeper emotional, spiritual, divine space within. This is the last quarter moon is also perfect for engaging in gratitude practice, because it hits us a little bit different. It hits us a bit stronger. As you know, we'll say like, well, gratitude is great for my mental health, but actually, like, I'm just doing it. When we do it in our last quarter, it's really happening, right? Like, we're doing it and we're doing it. We're receiving the medicine from that practice. And then this is, again, we're in the conscious physical body. So there still might be some actions taking place, but we are heading more and more into the subconscious, metaphysical, into the underworld. And you may notice that energy might be going a little bit lower. There's more of a stillness that's being invited, or there's some energy there. And if you're the type of person, it is also January right now, we're like, I don't get why I'm so tired or why I'm so low. Check the moon. Just check it. Just see. Just be curious. It may have something to do with it. Also, seasonally and seasonal living, we're in the darkest times right now, in many ways, but we're sitting with that. So give yourself some grace and use the moon as a little mirror, just like the sun mirrors it. Use the moon in a mirror in that way. And then our final step before going completely into the subconscious underworld, the waning crescent. This is the liminal space, the surrendering to the dark. If there is any resistance, if there is any more like this manifestation or this full moon didn't go as I thought, the waning crescent is going to bring the volume down on those thoughts. It's going to bring us down into the rest, bring us down into whatever wisdom we need to get, because life is cyclical that way. And we're always going to be learning the same lessons until we get them. And the waning crescent is that final invitation before we go back into the new moon, where we can collect a little bit of those breadcrumbs, desires, intentions. If anything, if we're to kind of put new moon and waning crescent before, waning crescent is that moment right before sleep time, and new moon is sleep time. if we're going to put it kind of in perspective. So this is even more subconscious metaphysical than conscious physical, but you may really feel it in the physical body as part of the collective, but also personal cycles. And I love this too, as to not say, well, like, oh, one lunar cycle is better than the, like, the surprise party is great. It is. And there's all of this magical inner working that's leading up to this party, that's refining, that's internal. And we have all of these like abundant phases afterwards that invite us back into rest. And so I love this quote from Kristen Rogers. The moon doesn't consider one phase better than another. She just glows, equally stunning at each turn. Why should we be any different? And really, I love this as an invitation into giving ourselves grace when we're doing ritual workings and things aren't showing up as we imagine, or we skipped part of our own lunar cycle and we didn't somatically connect, or we rushed through something because we needed to survive, and that's valid, right? Like all these different moving parts, they're stunning and they're exactly where they need to be. And I think the moon is a really great lunar magical tool, though it's one that we all have access to in the sky, to work as a mirror for us. Like, moon is there, everyone can see it. She just glows, equally stunning at each turn. And I love that. So to summarize some of this moon magic and to go a little bit into the personal and the collective here, this is kind of the breakdown if you want to have just a one-page reference for whether it's journaling prompts or meditations or contemplations for using the lunar cycle to just amplify whatever it is that you may be working on. But you'll see we start in the metaphysical underworld, we get a little bit into the physical, and we get back into the metaphysical underworld. And with the new moon, self-hypnosis and connection to desire, rest, hypnagogia, the waxing crescent coming right after. This is where I'm like, let's wait after the new moon and write down intentions and take some action if feeling aligned in that way. We then have the first quarter moon, refining your desire, getting even clearer on like, this is what I really want, this is what I really need. And for those of you in the Great Hall, I can refresh the object of desire or the ood exercise, which is a really great way to refine this desire, but using the conscious mind. When playing with the metaphysical underworld, it may be helpful to just feel into the body, feel into the desire. This is the very non-physical. And then we have our waxing gibbous. This is recommitting to the desire, stating the desire. So this is again where we're going from subconscious and we're going to go to physical. And this is where now, okay, I've done the inner workings, I've rested, I've cultivated space, I'm somatically safe within my body. And this is where I want to recommit to my desire. I have a deeper clarity about that too. And then whether it's we're putting out our moon water or we're doing our surprise party for our manifestation and our desire and just treating that with love and care, we have our full moon. And the full moon, this is where my old analyst head goes at with data, but it's collecting your results, documenting manifestations, seeing what has come to be in your physical environment, in your body, in your thoughts, all these different ways that are reminiscent of maybe those breadcrumbs from the new moon, like, oh, wait, this is what this was about. Oh, this is what that synchronicity was, right? And documenting those, because what that does is it solidifies our magical practices. And when people say like, what do you mean you're a witch? Or what do you mean you do this? And you're like, here's all my evidence though. And the moon's on my side. So, I mean, Then we have after our full moon, we have our waning gibbous. This is the sharing of that abundance, the teaching, the holding space. This is almost like the expansion out into the community in a way of here's my abundance that I got, whether it is financial, work, new knowledge, new insight. I set up a cup of coffee with a friend of mine. I'm like, I got this new insight and I just need to tell you because I know you'll appreciate it. Or doing that follow-up with that one job or that community center that was interested a month ago into like a moon class, whatever that may be, connecting with that, sharing that abundance. We're now going to go back into the metaphysical underworld with our last quarter. How can I in the cycle welcome this new reality and let go of the old? This is kind of the prompt of that. What was it in this particular cycle that is supporting my becoming as a sovereign individual? And then our final nap, going to our sleep resting space, getting ready for rest, gratitude, and liminality. And the question being, how can you welcome rest? Or even the question, what needs to be in place for me to be able to rest? I know many of us are doing many different things, holding space for many people, working many different jobs and projects and things. So how can I welcome rest during this lunar cycle? And before I get to this, I want to touch on the personal and the collective. So I know some of you dropped your moon that you were born under, and to use your natural moon cycle. So if you were born on the new moon in a particular year, in a particular time, going back to that and seeing that almost as your full moon, that was your surprise party. That was your high energy, insightful state of being. Of course, we have your whole astrological chart that have many other implications and things, but for the sake of lunar magic, considering that that is where you start your cycle, and you can layer the lunar cycle that we talked about in class tonight with your personal lunar cycle, and that adds more nuance to how you are going to be receiving parts of the lunar cycle. So I have here, your birth moon is the full moon, right? That's abundance, entrance into the physical world, right? And thinking about this as when you were born, the moon you were born under, that was the entrance into the physical world for you and your soul. Because the moon is that liminal, subconscious, soul, feminine type of energy, type of space. But this is how you physically came into the world. So the full moon is the collective birth when we're looking at collectively, and your birth moon is your personal full moon. So we're looking at it in that way. So this is just like in Kabbalah, how deep do we want to go with the nuances and things? See what is most supportive to you. Don't get bogged down by it. Or there might be some like going back on some calendars and seeing some lunar calendars and seeing where things are at. But I promise you, it is worth it. When people are saying like, oh, it's the new moon and I'm feeling super tired, and you're like, I feel great. I don't know what you're talking about. To make you feel a bit more supported in how your natural rhythms go. You may actually feel more energized on the new moon when the collective is tired or in liminality, and you may actually feel the abundance, which is isn't that such a beautiful gift when everyone else collectively is in the space and you can give them that perspective. This is my, waning gibbous speaking right now. As this is my right now, if I were to kind of use this, right, like waning gibbous is my space, and we're currently under, I think I just checked right before class. Yeah, we're in a current waxing gibbous lunar cycle right now. So I'm like, of course I'm refining my commitment to my desire to connect and want to teach, right? This is why Wednesday is my Wednesday is Mercury. It's in Sagittarius for me, and it's the recommitment. So this is how we can play with astrology for business, for service and community, for our own personal health in these types of ways. So this is, again, how deep you want to go with the nuances. But even when you don't, what's funny is you'll end up synchronistically doing it anyway. It's the more in tune you are with it that you're like, oh, I am in my rhythm. I am in my flow. You can use that as affirmation and confirmation. So I could not have the Lunar Magic class without including a calendar for us all for our lunar workings. And of course, we can always add the other layers too of, oh, it's going to be a full moon in Aries or full moon in Cancer or new moon in this. That adds again another layer to things. But now you know the general energy of the lunar cycle and how that can support you. And I say just start with that and test out again, like from a 1 to 5. 1, I'm really low. 5, I'm doing real great right now. And just test out for a lunar cycle how your energies match up with the collective lunar cycle and the personal lunar cycle, and see how that can be a supportive tool for your own magical workings, but also health, spiritual health, mental health. I found it very, very supportive tool in that way. And this will be available as a PDF as well in the class. So you can print it out, you can cut it out, put it in your grimoire and your book of shadows. I always like to have one of these for reference. I'm like, oh yeah, what is this? And then if I'm doing a launch this day or I'm teaching this day, what do I do? Okay, doing it on the full moon. We got a waxing gibbous, we got a waning gibbous. This is good. And if not, right, because life doesn't always work out in many different ways when we're juggling many different things, be like, here's the most of this situation that I can do astrologically. All righty. And that is it for our lunar class. I know that was a lot of information, but I hope some good summaries to put into direct practical magic, practical action. I'd be super, super curious in the Great Hall, because I think I'm going to do it too, with just checking in with, on a scale of 1 to 5, how energy levels are with the moon in the January cold months of Chicago for me here. I'm going to stop the recording for now, and we'll have some open questions.